Great, thanks. We're going to be starting. I said we're going to be starting.
So we're going to start with a normal 3-inch shell. This is a shell that Keith will fire. Maybe he'll give you a 3, 2, 1 countdown. And it's not a salute, so it'll be a color shell.
Yeah. Hello. Good to go. Look at this. Got a pocket hole. We're live? Yeah. Okay, we're live.
So maybe Keith give you a quick countdown, but this is a color shell, so if you pay careful attention, you may see some color. It's very hard daylight. So one of the instructive things about this is somebody calls you and says, do a daylight display for me. Well, you can shoot it up, make a bang, but you're not going to see so much. So whenever you're ready, Keith. The normal 3-inch color shell.
3, 2, 1.
Like a green peony to me.
Yep.
You see the green and make some noise, but you're not going to see a whole lot more. Notice how loud the lift charge was. Not just the break in the sky, but how much noise it makes just coming out of the gun. And you want to be 10, 15 feet from that when you light it. I think next we'll do a, let's do the low break, Q13. Before you do that, I want to count down. And the low break again, some of the lift powder has been purposely removed from the shell, so the shell will not go to its maximum height in the sky. It may only go half, it may go less. You may see some of the stars hit the ground. So this is what a low break can happen. Low break can happen if you don't clean the bottom of the gun. Low break can happen if the lift charge leaks out and you didn't catch it. Low break can happen if, what am I missing?
Undersized shell.
If you, thank you very much. Yeah, it doesn't go all the way down. You didn't push it down if it was stuck. Or if you put a 3-inch shell in a 4-inch gun. So in this case, he's removed part of the lift. Low break shell, go ahead.
3, 2, 1.
Why were there two of them? The effect. So that was an effect with actually two little inserts in it. But you notice the noise coming out of the gun was much less. That shell certainly didn't get as high as the other shell. We were fortunate in that that effect had stars that did not get very far from the center of the shell. Nothing hit the ground. And these guys did that on purpose so we didn't have to worry about ground fires. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that was the low break. Can I have your pen to cross off?
I'll let it go.
Who's got a pen? Thank you. Just throw it. I'll make sure I get it. Make sure I get it. All right, I get that. No, I want to get that. 15 is done, and the low break is done. Let's do the normal 4-inch shell. So same thing as the first shell you saw, 3-inch. This is now 4-inch diameter. A little louder, a little higher, a little bigger.
That was nowhere near as loud.
The white light
That was nowhere near as loud though, coming out of the tube.
varies. It varies. I mean, you're right, it may have been less, but it just varies from shell to shell. You probably will notice it between a 3 and a 5 or a 3 and a 6. It may not hear a difference between a 3 and a 4. Now that white light going up was the tail on the shell. The tail is it's a star that they glue on top of the shell. They call it a tail. It catches fire from the lift charge. The lift charge goes all around the shell. Some of it escapes around the sides, goes to the top, comes out the top of the tube. Some of it hits the tail on the shell. The tail lights in the tube, and you see you should see a trail of silver sparks behind it. You won't see it in daylight, but that white light was the tail. Another danger is when the shells have tails on them and you load them, if something does low break, now you got a star that can come down and find its way into the tube, cause the tail to catch on fire. If the tail catches on fire, the shell could blow up in the gun, or may not. Okay, so that was our 4-inch shell. Let's do the 4-inch shell through the plywood.
Okay.
That's Q6.
Yep.
Is that 3 or 4? We don't know.
It's a 4.
So we're going to fire a 4-inch shell through a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. Do you see it sitting out there?
Yeah.
It looks to me like it's the black guns to the right. Is that right? You see the yellow and then the black guns to the right with a flat board on top? Okay, pay attention to the flat board. And who's going to retrieve the flat board? Who wants? You want to get ready to run? Okay. Just walk up there when you're ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Now what happened there was a flower pot. That was a normal 4-inch shell that should have gone up, and those effects you saw should have been up in the air. What happened is because of the impedance of the board, went through the board, clearly, but it also looks like the shell broke. Maybe hitting the board or just on the other side of the board, the shell cracked, and the effects lit almost like a mine from the ground up. Other 4-inch shells would go right to the board, go to their maximum apogee, and do their thing. So we'll wait for the board to come back. You can look at it. And the assumption is that that's your hand or your bone or your skin, and you're not going to like what you see.
Now you guys remember I told you about the show that blew up on the ground. In fact, that the stars from these shells, they were approximately 100 feet from the sandboxes. They went entirely through a sandbox. That was one side of 3/4 inch plywood with a hole about that big, like a bullet, through all the sand, bouncing off of tubes, out the other side with a hole about this big. 3/4 inch plywood again. Luckily, because you quote-unquote can't hand light 8-inch, all the big guns were wired in the sandbox. They weren't sitting on the ground. If the 8-inch ones on the ground went too, I probably would have been dead.
How thick was that plywood?
3/4 inch.
3/4.
For this effect, your face has been removed.
Face, head.
How many plies is that?
Yeah, here, pen.
Hold it up in the air.
You said it was like 7 ply?
I think it was 6 or 7 ply.
Buddy, see it? Yeah.
Turn it around.
This stuff will kill you.
Yeah. 3/4 inch plywood, so you know, that doesn't affect the shell much. Thank you,
7
Mike.
ply.
7 ply, yeah. Pretty strong stuff. That's probably why, in this case, the shell broke and flower potted as well, because it is such a strong piece of wood. 7 ply. That's about the strongest, almost the strongest plywood you can buy commercially. Okay, I think we should do the dud. Is it a 3-inch dud?
Yeah.
Can somebody tell me what a dud is?
Doesn't go off.
It lifts and doesn't go off.
It does go off.
It lifts.
It lifts.
Doesn't go off.
Doesn't boom.
Doesn't break, and it comes back to the
Ground.
Okay, it's a round trip. A dud is a shell that seems to operate perfectly normally, except as you watch it go up, you also watch it come down.
That's the worst part.
Okay.
Yep. Anybody see it?
I can't see it.
Oh, there it is. There it is. That black
There it comes, here it comes, here it comes, heads up!
I didn't follow it.
We're not supposed to laugh.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's an inside joke. It was a tennis ball.
Always a tennis ball. Okay. Yeah, we don't do that with a live device. Sometimes when a dud comes down, if it hits the ground, depending on how it's made, it could explode on the ground.
And we didn't want to have to go out and try and find it. So we used the tennis ball.
Okay, so that was our dud. Let's do a normal Roman candle. A Roman candle is a tube into which more than one effect usually is loaded. And there's a little lift charge under each effect. There's a piece of visco that travels down the tube. As the visco burns and travels down, it lights these lift charge and sends the ball, or the flaming ball as they call it, up in the air. So let's do a normal Roman candle. I think it's 6 shots. 1, 2. Four shot, this shot, last shot. And the other good news is that the wind is blowing the fallout directly away from the audience, which is where you're going to be watching tonight. If that was blowing towards you back there, it would be so pleasant. Fortunately, the wind is in our favor. Almost always just time fuse, especially if it's Chinese made. It's just a piece of visco traveling down the tube.
They stack it in there and put a time fuse in a disc between each layer.
Yeah, an impermeable disc, fire resistant disc. So Roman candles have, especially when you're doing choreographed displays, they come in real handy. Okay, so let's go back to a shell. Let's do a. How does the hang fire? Who knows what a hang fire is?
That's right. Just kind of smolders.
fuse gets lit and the thing stays in the tube for a period of time, and when you least expect it, it comes out of the tube. So that's what we're doing. Let's do the hang fire in Q10. This is a 3-inch color shell hang fire. Yeah, the delay wasn't quite as long, but you know, there was a little piece of delay fuse put in there to make it wait. I guess we didn't make the delay as long as we could have, but that's okay. Anyway, the idea is sometimes that thing could be sitting in there for minutes easily, especially if your fuse gets
wet, damp,
fuse
wet.
gets wet.
The worst thing is, the shells that are most acceptable to that are the chains, which you use in your finale, which is the last thing you shoot. When we go out there, we always tell the guys that's the last thing to be checked. When you're looking to make sure everything left, everybody stays away from the finale.
So we're going to show you a flower pot next. What's a flower pot?
Shell breaks in the tube.
Yeah, actually the shell might actually blow up. It's a color shell, so it's not powerful enough like a salute to break the pipe, but it'll blow up in the gun or just outside the gun, and it'll look like that demo through the 3-inch plywood. It's a normal shell, but it creates a columnar effect of stars going from the ground up rather than those stars blowing up in a radial pattern in the sky. And it happened because the shell malfunctioned in the gun. Flower pot. Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Perfect. Yeah, you did that. That wasn't just a mine. You did that differently. Yeah, that was a true flower pot. Yep. So Keith probably just destroyed one of my guns for me, but that's okay.
I told you it was demented.
How did you simulate that? How did you simulate that?
No lift bag. Took the lift bag off,
Yep.
dematched on the time fuse.
That's what.
Stuck it in the top.
Yep, right.
That's why there was a slight delay, because the shell still had the time fuse on it. And that was, you know, the amount of time from it to leave the pipe to get in the air to burst. That's what you saw on the ground.
Is that buried in the ground?
How do you get it to the?
Pipe was buried.
How do you
It was
get
one of
it?
the old pipes, John. Don't worry about it.
If you're lighting it with, if you're shooting it up with air, how do you get it lit then? If
Radio.
you're shooting it up with an air burst, how does it light?
Radio
It's got a
control chip.
built-in timer.
And they use another technology. There is a wire going in the tube, and when the air if it doesn't see air pressure, doesn't sense it, then the electrical timer won't happen. But if it does sense the pressure, then there's a circuit that will give us an electric charge to light a time fuse. So it's a two-part system.
Yeah, Disney does the air fire all the time because they found out for their nightly shows it's actually cheaper than using gunpowder. They put a altimeter in every shell with an igniter, and it actually sits directly in the middle of the shell, and the timing is precise on it. Matter of fact, they can program it to go off at a certain height, so they can do different heights with a 3-inch or a 4-inch shell. It's pretty cool.
So that was the flower pot, and that was a real one where he buried the tube in the ground. Now, why did he bury the tube in the ground? Because he simulated such that that shell would blow up in the tube. So one of the things we'll do later is we'll grab that tube and see what kind of damage that shell did to the tube. You put the shell towards the top of the tube? Or was it at the bottom?
At the bottom, no lift charge.
Okay, so it was a shell with no lift charge. So here you had a shell where all the lift charge leaked out, you didn't know it, and you put it in there, loaded it, and it flower potted.
Never left.
And notice some of the stars went pretty damn close to the ground or on the ground. If you were there, you'd gotten hurt. Okay, so let's go to the, let's do a normal cake. This is the multi-shot cake device. Lots of cardboard tubes all next to each other, bundled together, taped together, glued together. Multi-shot cake, there's an effect in every tube. It'll go 15 or 20 seconds. It'll make a pretty effect. It should look nice.
Shove after the flower pot.
Now you know why the audiences love cakes. See? They're clapping, but nobody clapped for any of the shells. So that everybody gets frustrated. The shells are so difficult to make, so expensive. They go up. People say, "Oh yeah." They put a cake up, which and they always clap, which is fine. We use a lot of them. But that was a crackling mine to a crackling shell. What actually happened was a two-part effect. They load the cylindrical shell into the tube, but on top of the cylindrical shell, they put a small number of stars that produce the crackling effect. So the lift charge is under, lift charge happens, the shell, the cylindrical tube is propelled out. At the same time, the stars on top of it light. They get to a certain height and you see that low crackle. That's a mine effect.